We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Is America facing an unprecedented crisis at the hands of radicals? It seems that the days of being able to chase the American dream are slipping away in favor of a collectivist nightmare that holds conformity and compliance in its guiding light. But what are the off-ramps? And are we on the verge of discovering just how to turn this national vehicle around? Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we're talking about the roadmap for America, Elon Musk's Twitter buy-in, and is it a win for free speech or not? Why Joe Biden keeps getting it wrong on just about every foreign policy issue available, and what to expect from the Second Amendment and abortion cases before the Supreme Court. I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Hastings, Michigan on WBCH 1220 AM and 93.1 FM. Thank you for being here. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows that will whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Let's dive right in. Has America taken an abundance of wrong turns? And is she hurtling towards an ideological cliff edge? Well, to discuss these topics and more, we're fortunate enough to be joined by former US Consul, international business consultant, and author, Mr. Stephan Helgesen, who has just released his latest book, American Detour, Finding and Fighting Our Way Back Home. Thanks for being here, Stephan.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here, Mark.
Great. So, Stephan, briefly, I want to just talk about sort of a larger scale thing. Now, latest polling puts almost 70% of Americans who say that the US is on the wrong track. Is this the kind of societal malaise that prompted you to write your latest book, American Detour? Or do you see it as something more far-reaching?
Well, Mark, since moving back to the United States after spending 25 years overseas, I've noticed a sea change in my own country that I quite honestly didn't recognize before. And with the election of Barack Obama came a lot of hope and a lot of change. And it wasn't always the change that half of the country wanted. But we muddled through. Some would say got through brilliantly. I would say muddled through. But the current, as you put it, malaise in the United States has been building for some time. My thesis is that it started way back in the 60s with the assassinations of Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy. And that started the cultural ball rolling, and perhaps in the wrong direction. But to fast forward, Mark, I think that the election of 2000, when Al Gore lost to George Bush, was really a watershed moment that started separating the United States into two hemispheres of political thought. So the 4 years, and again, fast forwarding to the Trump years, the 4 years of Donald Trump exacerbated that split and chasm, and now it created a presidency that probably most people don't like. But this,
I noticed the hesitation on the word presidency there.
Well, Mark, it is a presidency, and Joe Biden is our president, and he's my president. And no one wants a president not to succeed, because the success of the United States is also something the rest of the world needs. But unfortunately, we've reached an impasse, a point of no return. And in my book, The American Detour, I use the American journey as a metaphor for following and tracking what's happened in our country over the past 60, 70 years, but more importantly, what's happened just in the last 5.5 years.
Well, let's get into that metaphor a little, please, Stephan. You use this idea of a road to describe how America has left her traditional pathways towards success. I think I have that right.
Yes, sir.
So that's the journey. What's the end as you see it?
There is no end.
Right.
And that's the surprising thing that most people don't want to acknowledge, or if they do, they don't acknowledge it publicly, because the journey continues on for America, just as it does for every other nation on the planet. Our society as such and our culture is constantly being influenced and changed over time by the winds of progress, you might call it, or by economic disparity or success, cultural change, etc. So the journey never ends, but we do have off-ramps from this superhighway of ideology, and we ought to take them sometimes to a rest stop where we can think about who we are as a country and what we want to be when we grow up.
Now, some of the themes that you explore in your book, American Detour, they relate to almost the culture war and the corrupt media. Now, are these symptoms of a problem, or are they the end result of a problem?
I think, Mark, they are a little bit of both, but they are the unfortunate outcome of a free society. A free society that allows for free speech and free expression and exchange of ideas is always going to be a bit tumultuous and will lead to divisions and opposition and conflict. So if you accept the premise that conflict in life is necessary for change and for improvement, then you can live with conflict, but you have to learn how to deal with it.
Absolutely. Although I think it's one of an oft forgotten truism that taking on a burden is the way that we do improve ourselves. Willingly taking on a burden and learning to carry that burden. It's something that not only gives us skills, it gives us hope for the future because we understand ourselves better. Now, Stephan, one question I always like to ask authors who are kind enough to join us on Liberty Nation Radio: is your book a message of hope, a warning, or a mix of both?
Well, I would
or something else entirely.
Well, it is a look backwards in our rearview mirror of political history to find where the source of our problems lie or lay. It is a critique of modern times based on that historical perspective, and it is a look forward to the possibilities that we can grab, if you will, to change our outcomes for the future. So I'm like every other human being. I'm optimistic at times, I'm pessimistic at times, but basically I'm curious. And I think that curiosity about possibilities is the fuel that fires the engines that drive a society. A society that is no longer curious about itself or about its options or future is a society that is in decline. And I believe that our society is not in perpetual or permanent decline, but that we do need to mobilize a lot of strength, forces, power, wisdom in order to move it back onto the right path again, away from this dangerous detour.
Stephan, where can folks follow your work?
Well, I have a morning email that's sent out from my website, which is called projectpushback.com. They can contact me through projectpushback.com, and my books are all available, all 12 of them, on Amazon.com. You can just search my last name. You'll probably find my cousin's books on there, and as well as my own, but Stephan Helgesen on Amazon.com.
Stephan Helgesen, thank you ever so much for joining us.
And thank you, Mark, and bless you in the work you do for Liberty Nation.
Coming up later in the show, we're talking liberty to find out just how significant the Second Amendment case and abortion case before the Supreme Court are likely to be. But up next, what does Elon Musk's Twitter purchase mean for American freedom of speech? We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
Maybe tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for
Guess what?
Thursday.
We're doing
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Getting noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.